Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winning Women Talk Show. And I'm your host this evening, Regina Shearer. And I'm so excited to be with you. I hope that wherever you are enjoying warmth. And if it is by fireplace, by heater, or by hot sunshine, I hope you're having a great day. And whatever time it may be, I want to thank you for joining us this evening, whether you're watching or listening. We're glad that you are a part of the Winning Women Talk Show tonight. And as you know, each and every week, we have a different woman on the show who shares her journey to doing that special something that fulfills her, that satisfies her, that meets her career goals, and definitely that she's passionate about. And tonight's guest has a variety of abilities that she's passionate about, and she'll share all of that with us. But if you've been a regular viewer or a regular listener, I hope that as you've been listening to these journeys, these stories, that you have been motivated and inspired by the challenges that have been met, by the obstacles that have been overcome, and just by the trajectory, the planned out trajectory in many cases to for these women to achieve their career goals and their dreams. And I hope that when you've been listening, if you have been on the fence about changing careers or always wanting to have done something but haven't had the means or the time or whatever it may be to do it, that maybe you'll be inspired and motivated by the information and even advice you hear to make your dreams come true. Because the truth of the matter is, you should be able to say, if she can do it, so can I. So throughout this show, I hope that as you're listening, you'll take a moment to call in with any questions or comments that you have. We would love to hear from you. And so if you've got a pencil, paper, or using your digital devices, call us 781-384-5587. That's 781-384-5587. Or you can email me, Regina, at rgbinternetradio.com. We would love to hear from you and hear your questions and your comments. And I know our guest will be more than pleased to answer and respond to them. I'm so happy to introduce tonight our guest, who is Dr. Latoya Bosworth, and she is known to many as Dr. Boz, which is a name that is in honor of her paternal great grandfather. Dr. Boz is a coaching consultant who has her own business, which is Got Hers, Get More Coaching. And hers is H period E period R period S, an acronym that stands for Health, Empowerment, Resilience, and Self-Worth. She established hers in 2020, and Dr. Boz focuses on helping others to connect with themselves more deeply so that they can connect with others more deeply. And those others could be part of their community, their workplace, and personally and professionally, it makes them more confident, more capable. And so we are waiting to hear what that's all about. She has over 25 years of experience in coaching, so she knows what she's doing. And her works span the continental United States, Canada, the UK, Ireland, India, and she just recently came back from Ghana. As a coach, she's a mentor and teacher. She works with professionals, especially women, and spends considerable time with younger women and women of color, helping them to create and build confidence, purpose, and joy. I like that last word, joy. In addition, she has over 2 decades of experience in education and human services. She's worked for the Department of Children and Family Services and the Department of Youth Services. She's also an arts and mentoring specialist and an alternative education teacher, a behavioral specialist, and a former adjunct professor, and she's also a poet and author. She's earned 10 coaching certifications, authored and co authored many publications, and her latest book, Joyworthy, a little guide to experiencing all the joy you deserve, spreads her philosophy of hers. She has received multiple awards for her work to include 100 Women of Color, Eyes of Courage Award, Business West's 40 Under 40, Business West's 2022 Women of Impact, Pioneer Valley's Women's Conference 2023 Goddess Award, and the Springfield Ballers 2024 Hometown Hero Award. And as I said, she's a poet, writer, a spoken word artist, and she should, I don't know, she should find a way to just create a whole plaza full of stores that can promote all the things that she does with children and adults. She earned her bachelor's in sociology, her master's in nonprofit and philanthropy, and her PhD from Walden University in social and community service. There's a lot more to her. Her website, which is brendaschild.com, will tell you a whole lot more about her. But tonight, she's going to tell you the things that the website won't. So, Dr. Boz, welcome to the Winning Women Talk Show.
Thank you
I
for
know
welcoming me.
I know that was a lengthy introduction, but there's so much to you. And just in case we don't have time to get to it all, I want our viewers and listeners to be excited and stimulated right in the beginning. But
Okay.
thank you for being on the show this evening.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, we always start off by asking, tell us a little bit about you, your background, where you're from, growing up, and how you got on this trajectory to doing what you're doing right now, coaching and mentoring and helping others.
Okay. Sure. So as you said, Dr. Boz, I am someone who really helps other people make space for themselves, as you said. It's super important to me that people know who they are and where they stand and what's important to them and their values, because that's really going to drive a lot of their work, and it's going to make sure that they're aligned with the work. I'm born and bred in Springfield, Massachusetts, but I like to say I got a little Southern in me too, because I was raised by my maternal grandmother who was born in South Carolina. So, I'm a New Englander, but I got a little Southern charm in myself as well. So I will say I'm a little bit of that, but I am schooled in Springfield, Massachusetts as well. That is my community. Even though I live adjacent to that, that is my community. And I feel like when it comes to me, my journey of being a coach, that it really began like as a child. I think I was like born to be a coach of some sort of way. I always joke about the fact that when I was a younger, I was the oldest cousin, oldest sibling. And so I used to gather my cousins and we used to put on shows in our backyard, and sometimes they were a little reluctant, to be on the stage because it wasn't their first interest. And so I feel like that's where the coaching started, with like hyping them up and getting them ready for stage and making sure that they were ready. And I feel like any role that I took on, I was always coaching. Once I became an educator, I was coaching. When I worked and established my own youth program, I was coaching young women about their confidence and how they show up in spaces. But it took until 2020 for me to kind of really put a title to that. But I feel like I've been doing it all along. I did have the title of educational coach, but I really feel like the life coach came in during the pandemic, when people were questioning what's next. People were quitting jobs, losing jobs, being at home stuck and not knowing what to do with all their time. And that's kind of like how it's just something that clicked in me. It was just being in that solitude and then realizing like, this is what I love to do. And you do it all the time. Like you like, even without being solicited, if you're on a phone with one of your friends, like you kind of tend to, sometimes I have to stop myself, but I tend to like start the coaching process. And so it just clicked for me, like, yeah, I think that this is the direction I want to go in, because it really is an umbrella for all the work that I do, no matter what it is, whether it is working with young people or whether it's working with professionals or whether it's working with women in a holistic capacity.
So I'm curious. I understand how it's in your blood, but you traveled in your educating of yourself through sociology and nonprofits and philanthropy, and then social and community service, and so I'm sure that informed what you do, right? In
Certainly.
terms of coaching, were you thinking of something else before COVID came? And I mean, were did you have other plans for your life because of your educational track?
Oh, that's a great question. So I would say that I feel like I got put in those categories because it offered some generalization as opposed to like specific things. So initially I was going to school for to be a journalist. That's what I wanted to be, which I didn't want to be a journalist. I've always wanted to be a writer.
Okay.
And when it was time for college, being taking up journalism was the closest thing I could get to being a writer.
Mhm.
I got pregnant my first year in college, and so things got real. And I was like, journalism doesn't sound like it's a secure gig. And so I ended up majoring in social work because I was like, hey, they always need social workers. Wasn't an interest at all. It just was something that I felt like I would be able to have a steady income
Mhm.
becoming a young parent. And I did enjoy the program. I ended up sort of disagreeing with one of the professors. It was a little traumatic, like now that I think about it, like in hindsight, like it was a lot of like someone feeling like they needed to save the black girl, the young teen mom. And so I just said, you know what, I'm changing my major. So I ended up majoring in sociology because it was close and
Mhm.
minoring in social work. And then I ended up in education. So even though I taught for 15 years and I was in education for 18 years, none of my degrees were in education. I feel like it was great that I kind of had all these categories. I ended up in nonprofit because I was working in social services and I wanted to open my own. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to school so I can figure out how to establish my own nonprofit. And
Okay.
then like a few months into the program, I was like, yeah, this sounds like I actually don't want to do this now, but I'm already in, but at least I'll know about nonprofits. But I knew
Mhm.
early on, like, this sounds like difficult and I don't want to do this. But so I kept going. And then just having one foot in the door, I feel like being an educator, you can't know what's happening. You can't not know about what's happening in the community and what's happening in social services because all of these systems are so intertwined. So when I worked in community services, I had to know what was happening in the schools. When I worked in schools, I needed to know what was happening in community centers, what was happening in juvenile facilities. So I feel like the degrees that I have, that social and community service, which is my concentration, I feel like that allows me to kind of have a broad umbrella to focus on things. So I've always had an interest in sociology and no matter what. I've always had an interest in education as well as in sociology, psychology. So I feel like all of the things that I've had an interest in have certainly helped to get me on that path.
Right. Well, as a coach, communication has to be a priority, whether it's written or spoken. And so obviously it all was purposeful. Now, you worked and for I guess I should say it was probably a good thing you did do nonprofits, et cetera, because you worked for a few agencies and then you educated as well. And what was it that made you say, I heard you talk about COVID and sitting around and thinking about this, but what was it that made you say, I'm going to open my own coaching
Mhm.
business?
Great question. So, during I was working for I had moved out of the special education classroom to working for a major school district, and my job was to do a lot of training educators and principals, but also managing certain special education classrooms, helping with professional development. And a big part of it, because we worked in this school district that was primarily Black and Brown kids, we started to look at racial trauma and then also just trauma specifically because I worked again in alternative programs where a lot of our students came from residential programs or they were involved with court, but they had experienced a lot of trauma. And so I started to look at specific trauma such as racial trauma, started looking at intergenerational trauma that was taking place, and that became a focus of examining that. So the more I learned about trauma, the more I realized that I was carrying a lot of trauma. To have to walk into a school building on a daily basis, and there's levels of ways of trauma. So I'm watching a child show up that has trauma, and then potentially witnessing a teacher or an educator sort of re-traumatize them because they're carrying their own trauma. And then me, my nervous system was always in like this, a lot of times honestly, fight, right? Because I was so defensive of these children, and I'm just like, if they are in front of you, you are going to love them properly, and you are not going to re-traumatize them. So I felt like the more you learn about the damage, the long-term damage that chronic trauma causes to your body, I was like, this, hey, like I'm teaching this, I know this. And if you do this for another 20 years, like how much is it going to impact you and your longevity? And what are you going to do about that? So as much as you love this, you can't operate in this system like for another 20 years. It will kill you. And that's really what I started to feel like. But then I still love to do the work. And so in working as a behavior specialist, there was some coaching involved. And working as a special education coach, there was coaching. So that's kind of like how the shift went. And then I started to think about, well, what do I love the most? Like what matters to me most? And I'm like, purpose, because as an educator, I was helping children discover their purpose. I was working with people in their purpose. So I think purpose was a big one for me. I think joy has always been important to me. So I found a focus and sort of stuck with it.
Right. You mentioned the term intergenerational trauma. Can
Mhm.
you tell us about that? What is that?
So it's trauma that may not have started with you. So some of the things that I experienced may not have started with me. Some of my behaviors that may seem like culture could potentially be something that happened a long time. So things that we build. So intergenerational trauma is something that happened to my parents, grandparents, and it just goes back and back. And that can be intertwined with things such as racial trauma. But intergenerational trauma can be that something happened generations before you, but it's affecting you. So that could look like something such as like substance abuse, right? So if great grandparents had substance abuse, it may have impacted how they parented their children, which then impacted how they thus parent me.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, that's wow. So your focus now is on women.
I love Black women. I love all women. I'm always prioritizing. I'm like, Black women, women. And but yes.
Yes. So what are what are the primary things when you and I talked prior to this show? You mentioned that um, you do coaching that helps them set goals and gain confidence in things. So, can you tell us a little bit about the types of, or the reasons, let me put it that way, that
Mhm.
women seek you out for coaching?
Mm. I think women seek me out mostly like there's a change that they want to make, and they feel almost either stuck in a cycle or paralyzed by like fear. Like I know I'm not happy with whatever it is, right? It could be their job, it could be there's just their personal self, how they feel about themselves. I know there's a change I want to make. I feel like I'm ready, and the support could help, but there's something where they're just not sure where to start. And change is hard because you
Mhm.
have wiring, right? That could be years and years and decades old, but also change is hard because we don't know where to start. And then it starts to feel overwhelming. And then if we're overwhelmed, we're like, you know what? Never mind. So then it's like we start that cycle all
Right.
over again. So most of the time they come to me when they're ready or they feel like they're ready, and they're looking for like, where do I start with that? So I would say that's one reason why a lot of women come. I think the other reason why a lot of women end up showing up is like the underlying reason tends to end up being confident. So it's like, I want to learn how to do this, or I want to start my business, or I want to, I have this goal of traveling somewhere, or I want to feel whatever it is. It's like usually underneath it, there's something connected to how people feel about themselves. So it's not just confidence, it's also self worth. So there's usually
Mm,
there's something tied to that. And again, that could be, everything from their work experiences and showing how they show up and how they're seen as women, women of color, Black women. It could be that intergenerational trauma. It could be just their own expectations that they have for themselves or expectations that other people put on them.
okay. Well, that was a good moment to stop. We have a caller on the line,
Okay.
and so I'm waiting just for it to get through. Let's see. Good evening, caller. We are so glad that you've called into the Winning Women Talk Show. You are on the air with Dr. Boz.
Good evening, Dr. Regina. Good evening, Dr. So I wanted to make a few comments, or maybe more so, ask a question. I've been having conversations with my friends over the past couple of years, and you know, I'm at the point where I know that I need to wind down and think about, retiring in the next, say, 20 years, right?
Hmm.
And with what I'm doing right now for work, I guess I'm content enough, but never quite content because, you feel like you could be doing more, whether it's in the profession you're in now or branching out and doing something that you love to do. Um, Complicate that with the fact that sometimes just talking to my friends, and I'm an African American woman, most of my friends were African Americans. Um, we kind of get stalled for one reason or another with trying to grow and advance. Sometimes circumstances are beyond our control. One of my friends I've been talking with is having a hard time in her current position and feels like, she might want to make a change. But I think it gets to the point sometimes where, like you had just mentioned, Dr. Boz, you have this fear because you're unsure what to do. You need some guidance. You've been doing the same thing for a long time. You're not clear on what you even want. So the question I have is, if you feel like your job is stressing you out so much, troubling you so much that you need to make a change, whether you're comfortable or not, is there anything that you can recommend that someone would do in the meantime until they actually find their passion? Because we all need to pay our bills, right?
Hmm.
So I just want to throw that out there and see what you could suggest, because sometimes someone will get to a point where they can't continue what they're doing because it's causing them harm, right? Whether it's stress, physical harm, or mentally just they're at a point where they can't continue doing it. So I wanted to know what your thoughts are. And thank you for listening to my question.
Absolutely. So a couple things that I picked up here from so let's take away just for a second like the part that now it's becoming like super duper stressful, because you mentioned like that you have other friends too who are like, I want to find my passion, I need to figure it out. So there's two things. One, you could be doing what your passion and love is professionally, and that's totally fine. And you could just work whatever job and do your passions outside of work. So a lot of times we get caught up in feeling like the work that we do in order to pay bills, because this is a transaction, right? I show up and I do this, doesn't always have to be what you love, because as long as you are incorporating what you love into your life. So if I'm working a job that's just but it pays the bills, there's a sense of security, and it's working for me, then I can use my passions through volunteer work. I can do it through a sort of side hustle, or I can do it, just for no reason other than this is what I love to do. So that's one thing. Now, when work starts to become something that is stressful to you, which again, all of this is connected, right? So if I'm feeling stressed, that's going to start to show up in my relationships outside of home, inside of home. It's going to show up in my relationships at work. It's going to start to show up on my body, physically, emotionally, mentally. And so when we get to that point, there's two things. Obviously, the first one is like just saying, quit, I'm done, which obviously doesn't make a lot of sense, right? If we don't have those supports and backups. But also, if you're looking to change a job, remember, you don't have to move right into that same career, and you don't have to move to your passion. So if it's like, I'm fed up with this job and I want to quit, I don't have to necessarily just go and find a job that's in that same field. I could go work anywhere that's going to pay the bills. So I could pick a job that maybe I'm not even emotionally connected to. So that way I do have time to decompress. So when we start to take the emotion out of it and it's just a job that I don't really care about, then now I have room for what I can care about. So you can always look for something that is going to pay the bills, but not necessarily within your field or what you necessarily love. And then in the interim, if you're staying there and as you're making your exit plan, it's important to set boundaries around the job. And that is those real boundaries with the people at the job and everything that's happening, and those sort of like emotional boundaries. So, how are you starting your day? Are you starting your day um, in a way that's going to set you in a positive mode? What's your morning routine looking like? So that on your way to work, even if you're like, this sucks, like, what are you doing on your way to work to get there? And I talk about this in my book, Joy Worthy, about creating routines and rituals and how, what are you doing throughout the day, right? So that you can kind of decompress. Am I utilizing my lunch break to take a walk if I can, or to do 8 minutes of chair yoga? Am I bringing like something that I really love, like maybe that dark piece of chocolate? And am I at my desk and am I doing a dance break? Maybe get up and do a quick line dance for 5 minutes and sit back down. So how am I incorporating joy within my day so that it is not taking over? And then how do I end my day? So when the day finally comes to an end, how am I signaling to myself that this job is over? I'm leaving it here. I am now home. And whatever it is that I'm going to do, how am I going to replenish myself, give myself joy? And so start to create routines and rituals.
I love your response, because people don't think about take a if you're taking that break until you can focus and start feeling better, to move forward to whatever. People don't think about taking something that you're not intimidated by, but you really don't care about. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never given thought, but that makes so much sense, right? Like you said, because if it'll pay the bills while I'm figuring things out, it that I never give thought. People usually look for what they feel will be aversion or somehow
Hmm.
connected to what they've been doing.
Hmm.
But I love that response. Our caller hung up because she's watching on YouTube and there's a delay between talking
Oh,
live and what is coming across. So, but I just want to thank you, caller, for the comments and the question. But
yes. And I hope it helped.
so if you go to www.brendaschild.com, you can find out, you can steer your friend to that website so she can find out how Dr. Boz can help her more personally and professionally through coaching.
Yes, certainly.
And all I kept thinking about as the caller was talking was about hers. Got hers, get more coaching, right? With the notion that you're dealing with health, right? Empowerment, resilience, and self-worth, self-love. And joy is at the heart of all of this, because when you can do that, it makes you feel good about yourself and the world that you're in. So send your friend to Brenda's Child, and then she can contact Dr. Boz if she wants to know more or wants to explore more about what she's feeling and thinking. Thank you. I had to say that because
Yeah.
I was listening to you and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is good stuff.
Oh,
And
thank you.
so um we have to take a quick break. So it's everything is just timing out really well. So get yourself something to drink, something to snack on very quickly, because we have to have a word from our sponsor and we are going to come back. But in the meantime, again, we want to encourage you to do what our previous caller did. Call us 781-384-5587. I'll say it again, 781-384-5587. or you can email me, Regina, at rgbinternetradio.com. As I said, don't go too far away.
At Portal to Hope, we're here to help victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking crimes. We provide support, resources, and hope to those who need it most. We believe that everyone deserves to live a life free from violence. If you or someone you know is in danger, please reach out for help. Call us at 781-338-7678. We offer a variety of services including counseling, legal aid, job assistance, and housing support. We also work to raise awareness about these issues and to advocate for change. Together, we can create a world where everyone is safe and free from violence. Portal to Hope is here for you.
And we are back with Dr. Latoya Bosworth, who we call Dr. Boz. This is in quotes, your favorite holistic coach. And you can find that out through Got Hers, H period, E period, R period, S period, Get More Coaching, which is her business and which she spends unbelievable time coaching, mentoring, teaching, supporting women how to become more confident and feel better about themselves. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Dr. Boz, was how does what you do play into the imposter syndrome feelings that women get?
Ooh, I love that we're going there.
Good.
So when it comes to imposter syndrome, I feel, and this is just my opinion, um, that when we're speaking specifically of Black women, that we don't have imposter syndrome. What we have are those traces of racial trauma. And so what I mean by that is when you think about what imposter syndrome is, it's sort of like this belief that you're going to get found out, right? Like they're going to find out I'm not good or I'm not capable or competent. But here's the thing, most of us, we know what we're good at, right? Like, so if we're put into a room, before we walked into that room, or as we're doing our thing, we're like, I am really good at this. I know I'm a great coach. I know I'm a great teacher. But then when we walk into these new spaces, there's something that makes us feel like we aren't. And so that's why it's different. Imposter syndrome is that idea of like, they're going to find me out. I don't think we're afraid of that. I think we're more afraid of they're going to judge me, which is different, right? That's different. I know I'm great at this, but there's going to be judgment, whether it's about my appearance, right? Whether it's about how I speak, whether it's about, whatever it is, which is true. You will likely be judged. And so in my coaching, I like to work on the idea that you will be judged, right? By your peers, by people who look like you, people who don't look like you. But how will you handle that? How will you make sure that you have a sense of self-worth to where you're going to show up and be your authentic self regardless of the consequences, and that you're prepared for the consequences and you know how to respond instead of react?
I'm so glad you said that. I found in my work environment that when I talked to my staff or departments, faculty, or was doing a presentation on something, that my white counterparts, colleagues, even staff would say to me, "You did a great job." And inside, Medea was at work
I know that's
going,
right.
I know I did a great job. That's
Yeah,
why I'm
yeah.
in this position, right? But
Yes.
you just smile and move on. And then you have that moment. Didn't I do as well as I thought?
Mm-hmm.
Because it keeps coming at you. And at some point, you have to be able to speak positively to yourself and reaffirm yourself without
Mm-hmm.
expecting it to come from elsewhere, or else it takes a toll on you, as you were talking about. That to me is part of the trauma
Mm-hmm.
that we go through.
Yes, because we are judged. We are judged more harshly. When I worked in certain places, there like I was told that like at one point in time when I worked out, so I worked in an alternative setting, definitely an urban school setting. That's the terminology, it was called. And so lots of black and brown kids. And I was always a connector because I started off again working in a community center. So I've always connected with children. And so sometimes it would be like, oh, well, the kids like you because you're like them, or like little microaggressions, sort of like about the fact that I was able to connect with them or relate with them. Or it was how I dressed, right? So somebody like my white counterpart, could come in with an outfit on and they have a large behind and hips or what have you. But because they're an older white woman, it's not a problem. But if I wear something similar, it's, hey, why do you? So it was a lot. It's a lot. And so that's what we start to internalize, or we start to become sort of like to this place where we are ready and always on the offense. And then we get in trouble for being on the offense. So it's a vicious cycle, and it's very difficult. And it took me a long time to be able to be in that space where I'm able to again respond instead of react, because it's upsetting and it's degrading. And I think it's important not only for you to know how to remind yourself of who you are, but to also have circles of people who always are going to remind you of who you are.
Right. So in the work you do, you when you were explaining intergenerational, uh, my mind was going through a lot of things, especially with some of the my friends that I went to high school with, and knowing families and backgrounds because I came from a little small country town. But as you were talking about it, do you find that it's intergenerational, or what is the common theme that women that you coach, or is
Mhm.
there maybe two or three common themes that they, or I don't even want to call them traits or whatever, but what are the motivating factors for them to seek you out, I
Mm.
guess?
Well, I what I see commonly, for the women who I work with of color, absolutely. There's that intergenerational racial trauma. I would say also, because I'm coaching women, there is also their socialization, which is patriarchal, right? Like there are boxes we are meant to fit into. There are ways in which are right and wrong, and it's very binary, right and wrong, in which we show up in society. There are certain jobs you take, there are certain ways you show up in relationships. And so again, we're socialized to do that, right? We see other people doing that. We see judgment on people who don't do that, so we fall in line. But then something starts to feel off or icky, and we're like, I'm not happy. I don't like this. This is not what I want. And so as we start to realize that, that's when it's like, how do I change that now? I know this is not making me happy. I know this is not working out for me. It's gnawing at me. Where do I start?
Right. I recall in our previous conversation, I was thinking about the fact that when we were talking about gaining doctorates, and I was thinking about, yeah, because I wouldn't have been as accepted
Hmm.
in my vocation and profession if I didn't have doctor right in front of my name. And I think that's true for a lot of women. I've noticed recently, there's another piece, and that is I always wanted to get my doctorate, but
Hmm.
I became a mother and a wife, and you know, and I just didn't have the time. I didn't have the money. I'm putting my kids through school, and now I see this trend where it's a bucket list item now, right?
Wow.
That women who retire say, "I'm going to go get my doctorate now," and yeah, I'm seeing
Mhm.
quite a bit of that.
Wow.
And there's a part of me, because of how we're normed, that says, but you're not going to do anything with it now.
Mhm.
You're spending all this money just to. And then the other part of me says, but you are going to be gaining more knowledge. You are doing something that you feel good about personally. And there's nothing wrong with lifelong learning.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So That's so interesting what you just said about like older women like or retiring and deciding that they're going to go back and you know that's so interesting. So what I'm thinking about when you're saying that is that one, first of all, we know that deciding to get a doctorate is not a game. Like it is like it is not right. Like I
Mhm.
was able to kind of cruise a little bit with the undergrad, right? Like you know C's and D's get degrees. Um, you know, my master's was a accelerated master's, and though it was difficult at first, you get into a flow and it was done. The PhD was like such a vast undertaking. I say that like so many things in my life did not survive the PhD program. And so that's one piece that like I just wanted to say like wowzers for the people who are doing it. Like do your thing, but like that's a big undertaking. And then there's also what I also wanted to respond to about folks doing it is that sometimes people I always look at the intention and sort of like the reason. Like why are we motivated to do that? Because sometimes we're motivated to do things again because maybe not it's not because it's expectations, maybe it's not because it's going to give us credibility, but sometimes it's just because I need to busy myself. I don't know what to do with my time or I'm not sure what to do next, so I'm going to do this. And so there's that piece too. And then the other piece is that you can be a lifelong learner without spending all that money on PhD too, right? So you could always self-study. Some of our greatest intellectuals, you know, were people who were self-taught. But I think if that's what they want to do, I mean,
Mhm.
sure, go ahead and do it. But I always, whenever people come to me with a goal, we do a lot of unpacking and getting down to why. What is the real why? Not the initial why that you tell me, but what's the real why? And so if it's not aligned with what we truly want, then sometimes it's like, hey, let's go back on that. I had a client before. I don't know if she's listening or not, but I'll use her as an example. And she was an educator, and one of her goals as a part of coaching was to become a principal. And so as we got into it, we found out that she really didn't want to be a principal. She really didn't want to leave the classroom, and that like when we talked about what she really loved, the parts of it, it was like, no, I actually love being in front of the kids. You know, being a principal is either going to be, you know, if it's a vice principal, it's going to be discipline. If it's a principal, it's going to be more administrative and dealing more with adults as opposed to children. And so we discovered that together that this is not what she wanted, but it's the natural progression. When you work in education, they're like, what's next? Are you going to be a principal? Are you going to be? And so initially she was going to enroll in the program and become a principal, something that might not have made her happy anymore
Mhm.
because that was the natural progression and that's what people were socialized to do. So it's really important to get down to why am I really doing this?
Mhm. Is that the most challenging aspect of your coaching with individuals, or is there some other things that are more challenging as you
Mm.
work with people?
I think the most challenging thing is when it gets tough and the person tries to like either like not back out because they won't quit the program, but it's like they start missing appointments or wanting to miss appointments, or you know the homework isn't done, or it's like now it's getting like and it's usually when they're on the cusp of like something. So it's like we've done all the deep work, we've done this, and it's like something big is coming, and they sort of freeze. So sometimes that
Mhm.
can get difficult when it gets, you know, when we get in the thick of it. And then sometimes for me, having to lovingly call people in about that. So having to call them in about that, or if we're not making progress because they may not be ready as what they thought they were, having to kind of like conclude services. So though I think those are the hard ones, right? Because that's hard. Those are hard conversations.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that because a lot of times the closer people get to achieving their goal, the more afraid they become
Mhm.
of
Things
accomplishing it.
have to change. Things change, right? We wanted this change, but sometimes we only think about the like, if I get this degree, I'll get this money. If I do this, I'll. So we think about the immediate outcome or the desired outcome, but we don't think about all the things that have to change in the process, right? Sometimes it's our habits, sometimes it's our who we socialize with. So there's things about ourselves, and then we don't think about how things will change once we get there. So it's like I want this position, but then what happens when you get that? how is your daily life going to change? How is that going to impact your children or your habits or your hobbies? So that's some of the work we do in coaching as well.
Right. Um, our caller sent a message and said, "Please thank Dr. Boz. I had to hang up to listen. Figured
Mhm.
she nailed my question. Thank her, please."
Oh,
So
you are so welcome.
yeah. So thank you. There's a few questions here, but I'm looking at the time. I cannot believe how
I
quick
know
this.
it's going by so fast, right?
I want us to. For all of you who are watching right now, if you look behind Dr. Boz's left shoulder, you see Joy Worthy. And when we started the show, I mentioned about the book, and would love for you to tell us about this book.
Oh, I love this book. This is my most recent publication. It's called Joy Worthy, The Little Guide to Experiencing All the Joy You Deserve. And it's a really thin book because I really wanted it to be for folks who don't necessarily, love to open books and read, or who, when they hear about self-help books, are like, "Bleh." And so this one's thin. It's divided in thematic chapters. In each chapter, I've kind of shared some insights, but I also give you practical steps for doing things. So as I spoke earlier about routines, I talk about why they're important, what's the difference between routines and rituals, and how to establish them. There's a chapter on how to find joy in times of sadness. There's one on how to find joy in the moment, how to find joy in the morning. So there's just different chapters on how to find joy.
But isn't that really the bottom line? I have come to believe over time, and I've been around a while, that I need joy more than I need happiness.
Yes. Right on, because happiness is temporary. I tell people that all the time when I do workshops on joy. Um, it's temporary, right? So you win money on a scratch ticket, I'm happy. The money's gone, you're not. And so it's so dependent on external things, but joy is internal, and joy is something it's a verb. You got to do the work to do it. And when the more joy we have, it's contagious, just as a lot of other emotions are. So yeah, joy starts inside.
It does. Is You said it, I understand it. Is that a complicated philosophy for some of the women you coach?
I think so, only because a lot of us don't feel that we're worthy of it, which is why it's called joy worthy, right? There's reasons why. Like if I've had a lot of and I this used to be me, like because I had a lot of tragedy as a young child and dealt with a lot as a teenager. There was a time where it was like I was afraid to be happy, right? Like the when's the other ball gonna drop? If I find joy, if I'm here, like so I couldn't even be present in the moment. I couldn't experience joy in the moment because I was like, this is so good. When's the bad going to come? Or I'm dreading or anticipating that. And where does that come from? That comes from something I internalized because these things happen to me. It's at some point I started to take it personal, and it happened to me because I'm just not meant to be happy. And I think people feel guilty sometimes about being joyful, especially if other people around them aren't, or if tragedies are happening around us, it's like I'm supposed to be sad too. And so there's a lot. There's guilt, there's self-worth. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I think it's important for people to start to really realize, like, not only realize that joy is important, but also question, like, well, why am I not able to be present and joyful in this moment? Why am I thinking about tomorrow or what's next? Why am I worried about the other foot dropping? And do I need, more than a coach and maybe perhaps a professional mental health person? So
Right. Well, I think if they get you as the coach, they've accomplished it all. They've got the mental health professional and behavioral health professional and mindset professional. Be, I like what you said. I have seen so many times when people do things because they don't believe that the happiness or joy they're experiencing is going to last. It's
mhm.
that this is too good to be true right? So when that moment comes that they're happy and whatever, they'll drink too much or they'll do something. It becomes excessive. They laugh too
Mhm.
much. They dance too much, whatever it may be. And like you said, tomorrow comes and it's over.
Mhm.
And so I love because that's the resilience, right? The,
Absolutely.
the resilience is the reality of today is not what it was yesterday, but I'm going to have joy in the day, right?
Yes,
I
yes.
love
And I have a moment to create joy. I can create joy anytime with what I choose to do and how I choose to frame things. And it doesn't have to be a big event or something. It can be little bites of joy throughout the day.
so I know that we talked about every year you have a conference called Forgot Hers, right?
Yeah, well, not necessarily every year, maybe
Okay.
every whenever it was it was like biannually in the
Oh, okay.
past. But because Got Hers has really picked up, which is great, it's something that pretty much now I currently host more so when I'm solicited to host it. But
Okay.
yes, Got Hers is a conference for women 18 to 24.
So again, if you're going to have one or any other kind of event, if people go to brendaschild.com, they can see the types of events and they can also find out more about um, getting to talk with you,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
about your coaching and how um, I I love your notion that you help people to connect more deeply with themselves so that they can connect more deeply with others. I love that.
Mm.
And I think that's important because others like you said are in community or they're in work or whatever. Sometimes we don't find that joy because we don't connect with
Mhm.
others. So
Mhm.
I like that. So they're going to find all of that out. Are there we know about your book. Is there something else we need to know about you that you'd like to share before we go off the air?
Well, certainly. I think I will say that just, when if you visit my website, there's as she said, you can find out about my coaching, but you can also find out about how to book me as a keynote. You can go on the educator page and find out what I offer for education. I also offer workshops for programs that serve youth as well as professional staff. A lot of it is on how we connect with each other, but there's a plethora of workshops and descriptions on there. There's also a link to a blog that I have on Medium where I have some of my articles. There's also a print page, which will give you a listing of all of my books, not just that one, but also my other book, which is called Quiet Strength, Loud Confidence. Reflections and Realizations of a Free Black Woman. So you can go and check out all of my book titles, dating as far back as 2008 when I self-published my first book of poetry. So lots of things to see on there. You can sign up for my newsletter that comes out, and there's also lots of freebies. So there's a free workshop. There's some goal starter kits. So please be sure to check out brendaschild.com.
Okay. Well, you have heard it that you can check out everything you need to know about Dr. Boz on her website brendaschild.com. I keep saying it because I've been on that site. There's a lot there to absorb and to get to know more about her, but most of all, that may change your life.
Mm.
Um, that's because that's what you are. You haven't said that. You haven't used that phrase, but based on the things that you do, lives change for the
Mm.
better. And so that makes you indeed a winning woman.
All
And
right.
I am so glad. I told her she was she nominal because I love that term, but it's true. And whether you I- is there a place we can find your your poetry prose or any of that? Is that in?
So on my website, there's a print page and it takes you to all of the books. But then also, if you there's a blog page. So if you go to my blog, it'll take you to Medium, but it's mostly articles. But the poetry books, you can download them on if you have like Kindle or anything like that. My poetry books, because they are older, I did poetry books from 2008 to 2016 were when I
Okay.
published poetry. And so they can actually go, if they go on there, you can download the books for like super duper cheap on Kindle. So that's a great way to access my poetry. And I'm sure if you Google Brenda's Child, you might find her on YouTube. So a couple of some old stuff, but I don't really do it as often as what I used to. So now it's a lot more writing. As I said, it's been since
Right.
2016 that I've done a poetry book, but perhaps I'm working on something for 2027.
Ooh.
I'll
Okay.
put that.
So, well, so that you know, you can you can connect with her on her website, brendaschild.com, on Facebook, Brenda's Child. This is easy. I'm just going to say Brenda's Child, and
Yes.
that's for Facebook, Instagram,
Mhm.
and her article links are there as she was talking about, and the books.
Yeah.
So we wish you much success in what you're doing, and I think there are some women who are listening right now who want to know more and recognize by a lot of things you said that they may need to be coached
Mhm.
so
I'm
that
here.
they can feel joy worthy.
Yes. Absolutely. Good tie-in. I'm here. I'm here. You can book a consultation. There's a link to book a consultation. We'll meet, we'll chat, and we'll see if we are a good match and create your own personalized coaching plan where we'll outline what we'll work on during the coaching time.
Wonderful. All right. For those of you who have been with us this evening, I apologize to those that I didn't get to your emails, but thank you for sending them in. I think most of you, she's answered your questions. I've tried to ask questions to get her to answer your questions. So I hope that she did that to your satisfaction. But if not, then you need to go to brendaschild.com. And so thank you again, Dr. Boz, for
Thank you
being
so
with
much.
us on the Winning Women show. And somewhere down the line, I think we're going to have you back again.
I would love to. I enjoyed myself for
And
sure.
so for all of you, thank you for spending time with us this evening on the Winning Women Talk Show. Join us again next week for another woman sharing another journey that leads her to feeling fulfilled and satisfied in what she does for others. And so, if you are liking this type of format, on Monday nights, we have a show that's called Talk Time. And Talk Time is hosted by Robert Brown, who will share with you things that are happening on a local, regional, and national and international level. And local being the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, primarily New England and Massachusetts area. It's on Monday nights, 8 to 9 o'clock, and you can find it on YouTube and Facebook Live, as well as listen to it on the radio station. On, if you like music, every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, there's music. And we have brought back smooth jazz from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. That'll take you right to sleep if you've had a stressful day and just need to chill out.
Mhm.
Smooth jazz will do it for you every evening. On Saturdays, if you're an oldies fan, oldies but goodies all day long. And from 5 to 7, you can go listen to Let's Go Back with DJ Bobby B, who will, you can call in and tell him what you want to hear, and he'll play your favorite oldie. And Sunday mornings, as you're getting ready to go to your house of worship from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30, you can listen to the gospel music that will make you say hallelujah with Bishop Robert G. Brown. And so there's much more. Go to rgbinternetradio.com to find out more about us. And if you have a friend that you wished had seen this show, send them to rgbinternetradio.com and they can go to Winning Women Archives and see this video and listen to it for themselves. Thank you for being with us. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. And remember, love somebody.
Well, thank you so much.